people of Earth, how are you? My name is Nick, this is Board Game Brawl, and it's time for another segment in this Quadrant's Top 100 list. I don't know what to say anymore since it was supposed to be 2016 and now it's 2017. Who cares? We're moving on. It's number 30, going up to 21. Let's get to it. My number 30, here, in this box covered in soda stains from one of my friend's kids when I lent it to him, is Concept from Repos and Asmodee, another Repos game. They make good stuff. It was my number 48 last year. It's moved up considerably for the same reason that Hanabi, which was earlier on the list, has moved up considerably in the last years, because I've just inexplicably been playing this game a lot because of certain people in my group who love it. But that's fine, because I love it too. It is ranked number 465 on Board Game Geek, the party game that never got its due, and has an average user rating of 7.0. Who knows? The party rankings are crazy, though. It could be number 20 on the party rankings. But in any case, Concept is a weird game to describe because it doesn't have any hard or fast rules. It does, but you could just kind of make up your own scoring rules and exactly what things mean in the game. It's all entirely up to you. But what it essentially is a sort of charades type thing. Or Pictionary kind of thing. But you have a giant board, a fair-sized board, with tons of little icons on it. Some of the icons are just little abstract representations of people, places, and things. It could be like two regal-looking people signifying something historical. Some of them are abstract shapes. Some of them are like leaves and water, colors, palettes over on the side. All these different things. And the only purpose of it is for you to try and get across your concept, if you will. It's almost like the name of the game. I don't know where they actually got the name from, though. But with Concept, you're playing, again, it's however you want to play it. Singles, teams, it's entirely up to you. But you're trying to get the other person or players or persons to figure out what concept you're trying to get across. And you do it using these little cubes and exclamation points and question marks that you just kind of decide what their relevance is. Like, you put the question mark out to signify the core of your concept, like, okay, book. But then you might say, well, okay, I'm going to use the yellow exclamation point to say that this is important. And then put a yellow cube on the book, and then put the yellow cube over on historical to signify that it's a historical book. And you try to get your clue across from a randomized deck of cards. Some of them are pop culture references, like the Power Rangers. Some of them are inexplicable French references, because this is a French game that you will never, ever be able to get across to an American audience. That's okay. Don't do those ones. In fact, the only weakness of the game is that there's not enough cards, and they've never put out an official expansion for it. But I'm sure you can find cards from some other word game, and it would be just as good. But as it is, I don't know. The free-formness of it, the creativity that it inspires, the way that you work in teams, it's just so much fun, as loose as the game is. And usually I hate that. Usually I hate a loose game. I want concrete rules, A to B to C. This is what you need to do to win. But I love how it's handled in Concept. Easily my number 30, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes up further in the future. But over on Board Game Geek, Ernesto Pavan says, a fun activity, but it's not a game. Even the authors say that playing without the horrible IMO scoring system is better. Then why did they put it in the game? My number 29 is a party game that is known as the Gamer's Party Game, and it is Dixit, with all of its many expansions. It was number 24 last year and is ranked number 147 on Board Game Geek with an average user rating of 7.4. Not a big change on my list. I'd call that negligible for the most part. Dixit has always been on my list. It's a fantastic, I even hesitate to say party game, because you can play this game with like 4 people and it works fucking fantastic. It's a very abstract game in some ways, but unlike the other party game I just talked about, Concept, the rules are much more definite here, and that's actually what people love about this game, is how unique the scoring system rules are. You have these cards with very crazy looking artwork. Every base set and expansion set of Dixit, which can all be mixed together, has a different artist doing the artwork, and they're all great. Some of them I like better than others, but they're all just so great. They're very crazy looking at times. They're very dreamlike and surreal. Some of them are just great, and just I would love to see. I want to see stories made out of these cards. And in fact, that's what you and the other players are essentially doing here. One player is a storyteller every round. It passes around from round to round. And they have to give some sort of clue about one of the cards in their hands and then put it face down so no one can see it. and then all the other players put forth a card that they think also matches that clue. Those cards are mixed up and revealed, and then everyone except for the storyteller, who knows which card was theirs, tries to vote on which one the storyteller's card is. In and of itself, that's a great idea. A great concept, if you will. Call back. But what's really great is how the scoring works, because what you want to do as a storyteller is give a clue that is good enough that at least one person guesses your correct card, but not everyone does. And you need to make it good enough that so that at least one person does, and no one else. And you don't want no one to guess your card, because in that scenario, you won't get points. If everyone guesses your card, you won't get points. But if only one or two people do, not everyone, you'll get some points. And so will those players. And as a player, you want to draw away as many votes to your card that you submit as possible, because you'll get points just for stealing away votes from the storyteller. It's so great in practice. It's hard to wrap your head around at first. I would say it's very difficult to be good at this game, because you also have to play to your audience quite a bit. It helps if you know who your friends, who the people are that you're playing with your friends, because you can read them better and what clues they may or may not be able to get. Like, oh, I know that Bobby Joe over there, you know Bobby Joe, works as a designer across the corner, has lived here for years. He is great with science fiction references, not so good on the historical fiction. So you need to know those kind of things, but it's so great and it looks so good, and it's always been a hit with the people I've played it with. That is Dixit, my number 29 this year, but over on Board Game Geek, I choose to say this is Jamey on 39481. This is also his registration number. Says, makes me feel like no one understands me. I know the feeling. My number 28 is a big pain in the ass to put on the table one-handed, and it is Scythe, brand new to the list from Stegmaier Games and designer Jamey Stegmaier. Again, it's new to my list, and over on Board Game Geek, even though it's been out for less than a year, or maybe just about a year at this point, it has risen up to number 6 in the rankings. Again, I'm fine with that. I love the game. I'm just consistently shocked by the games that have made it into the top 100 in the last year, since I haven't been paying attention. And has an average user rating of 8.4. This game took everyone by storm. Stegmaier Games was already around and already very well respected because of a few of their other games, most notably Euphoria and Viticulture, which has gone through about 15 different versions at this point. But Scythe was something different. He took Jamey Stegmaier essentially took some concept art that he saw and said, "That's amazing. I want to make a game out of that," and didn't just like slap the artwork on the shell of a game. He designed the game with that in mind, fully integrated the theme into it, and made a game that's so hard to describe that I'm struggling right now. But it's essentially area control, resource management, combat with steampunk mechs in an alternate universe history of the world. There's great mechanisms for combat. Is very light, and you don't really have to do it that much if you don't want to. And it's not really going to hurt you if you lose some battles. And I like that. That's new and different. And the way that you manage your resource board and unlock things is different. Like, I trained up in this, so I removed this. And it's hard to describe. But it's so great. And it looks fantastic. This is a collector's edition, but whatever. Even the base version of the game looks great. The miniatures for the mechs look great. The artwork on all the cards looks great. Everything about this game is high quality, and that includes the gameplay. Again, despite what people may think, if the gameplay sucked, I don't care how good it looks, it wouldn't be on this list. It happens to be an excellent game as well, and I think it is worthy of the hype. Number 6 worthy? Well, obviously not for my list, but it certainly has its place in the 20s. That is my number 28, Scythe from Stegmaier Games. On Board Game Geek, for every game that has a meteoric rise to the top, there's an equal number, or not equal, but a significant number of people who will fight back against that. And of the many of them, Ray of Frost says, if a company thinks their game sucks so bad that they can't invest their own money into publishing it, because this was published on Kickstarter, why should anyone buy it? Especially from this company, which puts out nothing but dreck. My number 27 is a much easier game to lift up with one hand, and that's really how I judge my games from now on. And that is Elysium, which also has a cover that's ripping off because it had water damage. Yes, for those of you who are anal retentive, I do not take care of my games. This was number 19 last year, which was the first year that it was on the list, first year that it was out. It's ranked number 260 on Board Game Geek, not exactly setting the world on fire, with an average user rating of 7.4, and it's from Space Cowboys, who also did Time Stories and I think Splendor, maybe? I can't remember. But in any case, Elysium is a great Greek mythology themed game that's very Euro game-ish. You are using these little pedestals representing like the power of the gods. Okay, the theme's a little bit weak. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. But you're trying to claim these different cards out on the field. That it's set collection. It's fancy set collection, highfalutin set collection. But you'll get an increasing number of abilities and points based on the number of cards that you take. Every different god's cards represent different powers and things and different ways to get to victory. But what you ultimately want to do as well is sacrifice these cards in order to put them in Elysium and sock them away for points. And there's certain cards that will facilitate that, like the Hades cards make that a lot easier. The Zeus cards are just about get up points as much as possible, and so on and so forth. It's great, like, because the way that it works with the different colors of I'm blanking on them, the columns, the pillars that you have, in order to claim certain cards, you're going to need pillars of certain colors, and if you use them you need to use them sparingly and use them conservatively in the right way. If you don't, you're going to totally screw up your strategy for the game. And there's just so much variety. You set up the game with random gods each time, so there's more than you need to play in a single game in the box, so you decide which ones you want to play with each time. And a couple of them, I think like Apollo is the one who has like a separate board that you have to worry about, so it's really great. Still waiting on an expansion, I think, unless I missed it. Even as just the base game, tons of replay value and a fantastic game. That is Elysium, my number 27. Over on Board Game Geek, Axel 21. Well, he's not doing much these days anyways. It could be him. Says that in 2016, how can a game be so utterly devoid of soul? It ain't James Brown the game, man. How much soul do you want? My number 26 was my number 21 last year, so a pretty negligible drop there, and that is Spyfall, the English version being from Cryptozoic Games, originally and also co-produced by Hobby World. I also have Spyfall 2, which is essentially the exact same game, new locations, but played the same way, and enough cards to play with more players than the 8 that you can originally play with, I think, which I highly recommend you never ever do. In fact, 5 or 6 is really what you want to play this game with. But I digress. Spyfall is another party game, a lot of party games in this segment of the list, but very unique, and thematically doesn't make a ton of sense. One player is a spy who, for some reason, clunked his head or hit her head and doesn't know where they are. And the other players do know where they are because they're not crazy, and they need to suss out the person who is having in some sort of amnesiac episode, which would have been a much better theme, I think. Find the amnesia patient. But this is what we're stuck with. In any case, you have all these randomized locations. You deal them out. Whoever is the spy doesn't know who they are, but the other players know the location, like police station or hospital or beach or whatever the case might be. And you need to just ask questions. That's the whole game, is very abstractly asking questions. They're not questions on cards. You come up with them. You ask one person, wait for their response. That person asks someone else, and so on and so forth. But the goal is to trip up the spy. As a good guy, quote unquote, you want to trip up the spy and make them reveal that they have no fucking clue where they are. But you also don't want to give them too much information, because if the spy can weasel out with a reasonable enough answer, meanwhile keeping the game going and having the other players give out more and more morsels of information based on the questions they ask because they don't know who the spy is amongst themselves, then the spy can make a guess at some point, or just run out the clock by giving reasonable enough answers and make the other players accuse someone else who seems more suspicious. It's very simple. It's very prone to people who are bad at these games having a horrible time. But for people who love this type of game, and I do, the deception and spy type game, and people who can tolerate the simpleness of it, it's so great. One of the things I place a premium on now at this stage of my board game hobby evolution are games that are not only creative in and of themselves, but force me to be creative and make my brain hurt doing so, and that's what this game does, and it doesn't in what I think is a smart way. That is Spyfall. Get either version. Don't play with more than 5 or 6 people. From Cryptozoic Entertainment. Over on Board Game Geek, someone who does not like these types of games, Kevin Mask. Kevin Mask, it's like the Common Rider, the Mask Rider, whatever. It's late. I hate games like this. I mean, really despise them. I don't know why anyone thinks this is fun, but so many people do. For my number 25, there are people who, in the board game industry, who think they are much funnier than they actually are and like to make games with names based on board gaming concepts that are about the thing the name is implying. For example, deck building, the deck building game where you build a deck, or worker placement, the game where you place workers in jobs. Well, one day, maybe I'll make a game called Edition Wars, like Sedition Wars, where different competing editions of games compete against each other. Where am I going with this? I don't know. Let's move on. No, where I'm going with this is the fact that there are so many games on my list that are different editions of things, and it's kind of annoying in a way. But in any case, Fury of Dracula, 3rd edition, is my number 25. It was number 28 last year, and I think last year it was just the 2nd edition. I'm not even sure this one was out until this year. But either way, I liked them both, and I was perfectly happy with the 2nd edition as it was. But the 2nd edition was out of print. And the 2nd edition was also very long and kind of clunky. The 3rd edition had here's the interesting thing. For a while, 3rd edition had the benefit of actually being in print, as well as being a simpler game and a more streamlined game. Now I think it's going out of print again. So soon! Because of the whole Games Workshop fiasco, where Games Workshop and Fantasy Flight Games, the publisher, are no longer working together. And this was originally a Games Workshop game way back to the 1st edition. So I don't know where the future of this game lies at the moment. It doesn't look good, but I think this is still pretty widely available for now. And you should get it if you've been holding off on it. Fury of Dracula is a great game where, as the name implies, one player is going to be Dracula. The other players are the classic Bram Stoker characters who are trying to track him down across the old European countryside, and it's crazy great. It's one versus all. It's hidden movement for Dracula. Dracula can set traps and use special powers and summon wolves and the children of the night. And the other players have their own special powers too and have to try and corner Dracula, but hopefully not alone. But the purpose is to kill him over and over again as much as possible, because time is against you. And if if enough time passes, he gets too strong and just goes away permanently. And I don't know what'll actually happen. What's his end game? Do you really think that Dracula can stand up to a Gatling gun when those are invented? He'll have a good run until then, and in the meantime, you should probably stop him. It's great. Even the newest edition of the game is still a little bit complicated and long. However, totally worth it. I like the changes they made in this one, subtle though some of them may be. Some of them a little more drastic, and I think well worth it how the day and night system works this time around. And any version of the game looks quite good. So no matter how you want to go about getting it, get it while you still can, because it's a fantastic, very thematic game, and it's a one versus all game and hidden movement, which is two of my favorite genres. So that is Fury of Dracula, 3rd edition, a classic in any form, from Fantasy Flight Games for now. By the way, I didn't even say it's ranked number 163 on Board Game Geek with an average user rating of 7.7. However, also on Board Game Geek, there are some detractors. Omertron says, I loathe hidden movement games. No one I know I've not played... Oh, okay, wait a minute. He says, this is great. I loathe hidden movement games. No, I know I've not played it, but there is literally nothing they could add to this game to make it worth playing for me. Stack $100 bills? Speaking of Games Workshop, this one is directly from them, but they'll still probably put it out of print because that's what they do. This one is Warhammer Quest: The Silver Tower. It is brand new to the list this year because it only came out within the last year, I think. I don't think it was at the end of last year, but I might be wrong. And therefore, because it is still somewhat new and because it's Games Workshop, which is totally anathema on Board Game Geek still to this day, it is ranked number 1,608 with an average user rating of 7.7. So I never played the original Warhammer Quest. That's another reason people hate it, is because people think this is sacrilege. It's just a redone version of Warhammer Quest without actually reprinting the original Warhammer Quest, which is what people really wanted. But that seems to not ever going to happen. Either they didn't want to invalidate the old version that people have, or whatever. By the way, the miniatures in here are just getting crushed and broken. It's so great. But anyways, Warhammer Quest of Silver Tower is like a soft reboot of the original, where you're going through this magical tower of Tzeentch, one of the chaos, like the chaos god of magic, and it's randomly changing dungeon floors and things like that. You're cooperatively working together against the game with other Warhammer fantasy type characters in the Age of Sigmar storyline. Another reason why people hate this game. I don't know anything about any of that, so I don't care. What I care about is the fact that this is a very, very, very fun, thematic, cooperative fantasy adventure game with fantastic looking miniatures, great artwork. There's little story elements where you get to a floor, you read a little bit of the story, you have to make important decisions, you have to solve puzzles, you have to fight really cool monsters. I love the combat system, which is both simple and yet has a lot of decision making involved. There's a great system of how you can learn skills. It's just great. And I love the different character classes that you have as well. Putting together the miniatures is a big fucking pain in the ass, but if you don't mind that and you're willing to put up with that, and you're willing to put up with the price tag of like $100 for this, it's worth it for sure. Obviously, it's in my number 24, and I love it. It is Warhammer Quest Silver Tower, the sacrilege that it is, from Games Workshop. But over on Board Game Geek, Data Raven 1985 says this should not be called Warhammer Quest with a question mark. He's not sure. It has nothing to do with the game, and just in general is total garbage like Age of Sigmar. See, I told you. My number 23 was my number 10 last year, which means it fell 13 spots, which is not insignificant. The hype is kind of worn down for me, and that is Blood Rage from Eric Lang and Cool Mini or Not. It has an average user rating of 8.2 and is ranked number 16 on Board Game Geek. The hype is not dead over there. And that's not too far from where I have it. Blood Rage is an excellent game. Looks fantastic. Very cool miniatures, because that's what the name of the company is. And a great theme as well, where you are Viking warriors trying to bring about Ragnarok, or Ragnarok's going to happen, and you want to be have front row seats for it and also be the best performers. I don't know where I'm going with this metaphor. But you're trying to use your troops and perhaps monsters that you get that are super cool in order to score as many points as possible. Sometimes you want your Viking warriors to die in the most glorious way possible. Sometimes you just want to wreck your enemies as much as possible. There's light card drafting in the game, and great little like almost worker placement, area control type elements to it as well. Lots of disparate elements, but it's still a fairly straightforward and simple game that looks fantastic, and also just has a lot of the Ameritrash things that I like in a game that is not too overly random and has a lot of heavy decision making, and yet is not boring, which is super important. I don't know if you know that. Blood Rage, my number 23 this year, but over on Board Game Geek, there's always haters. D. Corbin says, this is not a troll rating. The game was absolute torture to play. I gave it several tries, and each time it was an even worse experience. I suspect this game greatly benefited from Kickstarter, as owners were fully committed emotionally and financially before even trying the game. He's not wrong about that. My number 22 is, whether you want to call it a party game or not, it's either one of my greatest party games, the ones I love the most, or just a very simple multiplayer random hidden roll fest, and that is Shadowhunters from Z-Man Games. Boy, I've always loved this game. This has always been a great hit with my group, because first off, it has the hidden element, the hidden roll element, which is always great. People just love doing that, and it's a very simple format here. It's not as tense and stressful as other games like The Resistance. But as well as that, there's so many characters in the game with different powers. There's 3 different factions. You're either a shadow wanting to kill the hunters, or the hunters wanting to kill the shadows, or the neutrals who have wildly different end goals for each of them. And it's great trying to figure out what those are as you proceed through the game. Meanwhile, the game itself is just sort of random dice chucking, going to different locations, randomly determined, getting cards, and sometimes you just draw a card and it might just hurt you. So the gameplay itself, maybe not anything to write home about, but I think its simplicity and the fact that you can play it with so many players, up to 8, and also the different varying abilities and trying to figure out who your teammates are, because you don't even know that. It all just works together, and it's so fast and fun and easy to learn and play that it's hard to not, in my group at least, fall in love with this game. And we play it all the time. That is Shadowhunters, my number 22. Also ranked number 615 on Board Game Geek. I'm surprised it's that low, actually, with an average user rating of 6.9. Note over on Board Game Geek, however, Saxenti says, I would not go so far as to say that I would cut my own throat before I would ever play this game again, but I might certainly saw on it a bit with a box cutter. And if I did nick the old carotid when doing so, I might at least die with the consolation that I would never again suffer through a session of Shadowhunters. Acting! And finally, for this segment of the list, we're getting closer and closer, but just missing the top 20. My number 21, a brand new game to the list, and therefore one of the highest new games on the list, maybe the highest. That is, in its special Kickstarter wooden box, Secret Hitler, the actual game box that you'll probably see at retail. I'm not even sure if it looks like that, but it's something similar to that. This is ranked number 425 on Board Game Geek with an average user rating of 7.6. Again, this is kind of new. I'm not even sure that you can buy this game at retail yet in any version. By the way, the wooden box is completely unnecessary, but it looks cool. Secret Hitler is from most of the same team that brought you Cards Against Humanity. It was sort of kickstarted by them and published help from them, but they're doing it with other designers. They got a weird thing going on over there, okay? So I'm not exactly sure who's to blame for this. But it's certainly a game that takes a ton of inspiration, like outright, from the Resistance, shamelessly, I would say. And yet, if you've been paying attention to my list, you know that you're not going to see Resistance above Secret Hitler, because that was already way back, like 40 entries back. I love Secret Hitler. It has almost completely replaced the Resistance. The Resistance is still on my list because I still think it's a fantastic game, and I might still bust it out because it's at least got some differences between this one. But I do think that what Secret Hitler does, it does better than the Resistance. First off, as far as theme. Now, we'll obviously talk a bit more about this in a second when we get to the Board Game Geek comment, but some people are just never going to play this game because they have an irrational fear of even potentially pretending to maybe endorse the idea of playing a game that involves someone being Hitler, killing Nazis, or taking control of an entire Nazi army in a game like Memoir 44 is totally okay. No, that's fine, because that's just an army. But being a person, that's out of line. So there's going to be people who will never ever play this game because they have an irrational fear of the theme. And yet I think that the theme is the most unique and coolest part about this. No, it's not that it's supposed to be fun to play as Hitler. The whole point is that of the game is to show how someone can manipulate a group of people into rising to power. Which, by the way, seems pretty relevant in today's world. A demagogue rising to power by manipulating people and telling lies. I'm sure that has nothing to do with anything. But it works very well in Secret Hitler. And they really abstract the game out by having this cool retro-style artwork that features like lizard people for the Nazis. You put your little hidden roll cards in envelopes, and you have these little tiles representing votes. And that's the thing that's the best about this, is that so much of the game is similar to the Resistance, but the core element is very different and very cool, where you are trying to get either fascist or liberal policies passed. And that whole thing of how it works, and giving the next person, or like the Chancellor gives the President, or vice versa, the Chancellor gives the President two policies, and that person has to pass one of those policies. They must do so. But the thing is, they're limited by what the Chancellor gives to them. So they might be two fascist policies, in which case the President has to play one of them. At which point, the Chancellor can say, whoa, I gave him a liberal policy. Why did he not pass that? At which point, the President can say, no, you gave me two fascist policies. That whole mechanism in the game, I love, and it just works so well. And it's one of the many reasons I love this game more than the Resistance. So, Secret Hitler, if you're offended by the theme, that's okay. I would say you're really missing out on a great party game experience by doing so, though. That's my number 21, brand new to the list. But over on Board Game Geek, so many good choices for people utterly disgusted by the idea of a theme that might slightly offend them. But one of the best was Olivier Andu, who wrote, in a weird, disjointed way with lots of ellipses and parentheses, I know that one should not rate a game that one has not played. I love it. I love it when they do that. But this will be an exception. Discovering Secret H, He won't even say it. He won't even say the word. I'm stunned and disgusted. To the designers, you don't deserve a 1. Not even a 0. But years in jail for contributing to la banalisation du mal. The normalization of evil, I think it is. Anyone bringing people to associate the word fun with the name of Hitler is a criminal. Well, folks, you can almost taste it. We're getting so close to the end, the very late end. But it's all part of my master plan. My master plan to make you... I don't know. I got nothing. Stay tuned. We're getting closer to number 1. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.